Thank you again, Charles Hill. I greatly appreciate it very much. You know, almost 4 weeks on the job now, and I'm just thrilled to be here in this wonderful city of Savannah and to be a part of Connect Savannah as well. And I'm looking forward to sharing with each and every one of you in the coming months some real exciting plans that we've got for Connect Savannah from the investments that Charles Hill and the team are making. And also, I want to be an active facilitator also in what is generated over the next day and a half here. But today, our focus is on one of the greatest comebacks in business. Stuckey's, a beloved interstate highway stop known for its delicious pecan log rolls, traces its roots back to 1937 and was founded by our speaker's grandfather. After being sold, and despite facing decline under corporate ownership, she reclaimed the brand in 2019, igniting a remarkable insurgence. Under her visionary leadership, Stuckey's has flourished, expanding product lines, retail outlets, and again garnering national attention. Her journey embodies resilience and an enterprising spirit, earning her accolades as one of Georgia's most influential and admired CEOs. Today, she is here to share with us the art of an incredible comeback. So please join me in extending a warm Savannah welcome to Ms. Stephanie Stuckey.
Thank you, Rufus, and thank you, Representative Mayor Jackson. Such an honor to be in your presence and appreciate all your service to our community and to our state. You go give them hell under the gold dome. Good morning. I am here to talk to you about making a comeback. Something I know a thing or two about, because this was me just 5 years ago. I had been head of sustainability for the city of Atlanta. It was part of a long career that was dedicated to championing Georgia's air, water, and land. I've been a lifelong environmental advocate. I'm an environmental attorney. Before being head of sustainability, I'd been a state representative for almost 2 decades. So my whole life had been, frankly, in a bit of a green bubble where I was so happy wearing my Birkenstocks and drinking my oat milk lattes with my greenie friends at our fair trade coffee shop, talking about how we were going to save the world. And then 4 years ago, I had the unexpected opportunity to buy my family's failing business. So I went from this and this to this. I love this t-shirt, eat here and get gas. So I am suddenly selling pecan log rolls, rubber alligators, kitschy souvenirs like ashtrays shaped like toilets that say, "Put your butts here," to gas-guzzling tourists across America. Who's familiar with the Stuckey's brand, by the way? I love it. All right, so there's some hands not waved, and that's okay, because we had a bit of a downfall. So those of you who know our brand and those of you who don't, this is what we look like in our heyday. We were a roadside oasis where travelers on America's interstates could pull over and find clean restrooms and fun souvenirs and quick hot meals, fill up with gas, and of course get pecan log rolls made by Stuckey's. And I'm going to take you on a very quick trip in the Wayback Machine so you can hear a little bit about what happened to our brand. And I'll tell you how I managed to move forward with 3 of my comeback lessons. So this is how we were founded, as Rufus said in the introduction. This is my grandfather. During the Great Depression, there were not many jobs in our state, but there was one thing that is plentiful in Georgia, and that is pecans. We happen to be actually the #1 state in the country for pecan production. I know people love to call us the peach state, and I love peaches. I don't want to bash our other agricultural commodities, but we are #3 in peaches. We are #1 in pecans. Just a tiny dig there. So my grandfather started selling pecans on the side of the road. And like any great entrepreneur, he soon figured out that he had a solution to a problem that people had. Because motorists would pull over and they would say, where can I get gas? Where can I go to the restroom? Where can I get a snack? So pretty soon, he saved up his money and he built this. The first Stuckey store in Eastman, Georgia. I know I talked to someone earlier from Eastman, Georgia, not too far from here in the middle of the state. And he started what became the first roadside retail chain. Before there was Love's, Racetrack, TA, or Buc-ee's, there was Stuckey's. Yeah, you can applaud that, thank you. At our peak, yes, we had almost 370 stores in 40 states. He had a candy plant and a distribution center. He had a sign painting company, 4,000 billboards on every major highway in the country. He had a trucking company. He was fully vertically integrated. But then he sold the company. And in order to have a comeback, we have to have a setback, right? And we sure had one. So this was our setback. My grandfather sold the company, Pet Dairy Corporation. They got bought out by a Chicago railroad conglomerate. A Chicago railroad conglomerate. They did not understand a kitschy southern brand that sold rubber alligators and pecan log rolls. So they started selling off the company's assets. And also there were a bunch of other external factors that happened. Companies don't die overnight, right? It takes a while. So we had the Arab oil embargo. People started driving less. There were some changes in the airline regulations. People were flying more. So when I grew up, people thought nothing of piling. I'm number 4 of 5 kids. We would be piled in the back of our Woody station wagon. We'd drive all over the country. We thought nothing of a 5-day trip. People started flying, and so our stores declined as a result. So stores that once looked like this now largely look like that, right? Or even worse, we went from providing fun and excitement to America's families to providing fun and excitement of a whole different kind. Some of you, it may take you a minute. You might need some more coffee to get that reference. The good news is my grandfather constructed really great stores because they held up, and we were very popular, we still are, with a certain chain called the Lion's Den, just FYI. We also went from selling pecan log rolls to rolling paper. This is a vape shop that sells cannabis in Washington State, formerly a Stuckey's. And those wonderful billboards that my grandfather was so proud of that were works of art. They went from this to when I had the opportunity to buy the company. Oops, they look like this. I've got a little theme here today with adult superstores. I promise I will be moving on from the scatological. And our candy and the packaging that was so wonderful. Again, works of art, the way he designed his nuts and his candies, right? He went from making his own candy, our company had a candy plant in Eastman, Georgia, to by the time I had the opportunity to buy the company in 2019, everything was outsourced. We had about 10 different companies that were making our product and slapping their label on it. And so it went from this to this. And it tasted as bad as the packaging. So look at this, all right? I am not a graphic designer. I wish I'd gone to SCAD and could appreciate some of this or not appreciate this. But that product, it looks like dog vomit. That's what had my family's name on it, right? And they even got the packaging wrong. It said committed to quality since 1928. We were founded in 1937. Like you could do a Google search. It was like somebody's flunky nephew in the print shop who knew barely how to do Adobe Photo, whatever, and came up with our packaging. So that is what happened to our brand after 50 years of outside ownership and, frankly, mismanagement, right? And so when I had the unexpected opportunity to buy the company in 2019, by the way, I sunk my life savings into buying the company because nobody would loan me money. for a business that was 6 figures in the red. I will tell you how much I knew about business at the time. I got very excited. I knew enough to ask for the financial reports. And I remember looking at the bottom of the statement, and it said $600,000 and some change. And I was like, okay, we got some money. Until I talked to a financial expert who said, Stephanie, that's in parentheses. Yes. Then they said, well, what's your EBITDA? I thought they were talking about a Swedish rock band. I had to Google EBITDA, and turns out we had a negative EBITDA. So it cracked me up when, Rufus, you'll appreciate it, the Atlanta paper, this was the headline that they ran the week I bought the company. Heiress drives family legacy. Stuckey's on the road to revival. So I don't know about you, but when I think heiress, I think Paris Hilton. I think someone like the Kardashians who actually inherited, they didn't spend their life savings on something of value, like a hotel chain. So let me show you my inheritance. This is my first week on the job at Stuckey's. We had a rented warehouse in Eastman, Georgia, where all the stuff that we were outsourcing, we would assemble and ship to what remained of the Stuckey stores. There were about a dozen original stores, and we had about 40 licensed stores. It was a hot mess, all right? And so we had all this dusty inventory, including 6 cases of Britney Spears t-shirts. Thank God she made a comeback. I was able to sell those. And since we're a family brand, I do my own social media because we're still a scrappy comeback brand. So this was my social media post for the day, and we are a family brand. So I cut off the bottom, but it did say, it's Britney, bitch. Yes, that's week 1. All right, so that wasn't bad enough. I called my father, who I love very much. We're close. But this was a moment of tough love. I said, Dad, what do you think about this? I'm going to bring back the family brand. So here's what he said to me. You've never even run a lemonade stand. What makes you think you can run Stuckey's? And I remember that meeting so well. Have any of y'all had moments like that when somebody says something to you that's really, really hard? All right, I did not have a good comeback. I remember walking away from that meeting, and I was like, oh, yeah, well, I just think I can. And I'd worn heels. Actually, they were little stilettos. I've since learned to wear chunky heels. But I remember saying, I just think I can. And then I walked off and I tripped. So that was my wonderful, wonderful meeting with my father. I say that story not to get too much of a dig at my dad, but to just say, when you go through tough times, sometimes there will be naysayers. And sometimes they're the people you love and respect the most. And I think what gives you grit is when you use those moments as a moment of empowerment, because I used that moment. I kept saying, okay, I'm going to prove you wrong in a loving, kind way. So this is why I did it, though. People ask me, well, why on earth would you do this? Why would you sink your life savings? And it's because of this man. My grandfather. I loved my grandfather. This was taken a week before he died. I was 12 years old. Yeah, that's me with the United Colors of Benetton shirt and the jug ears. Any other Gen X's in the room represent? All right, that's us. You remember that era? There's my brother rocking the Madras pants in the front row. He loves that I use this photo. So I did it because I loved my grandfather. And anyone here with a family business, or if you just had a family member like a grandfather that you loved, you can understand that, right? And I didn't want his legacy, everything that he had built, to become faded, closed stores on the side of the road, or worse, XXX stores on the side of the road that people would point to and say, that used to be a Stuckey store. I wanted to prove that you can change your story at any point in your life, even in your 50-ish age of your life. And I loved Bruce's remarks so much. I was very nervous about following him, but now I'm excited about following him because I can use some of his material in my talk. So I actually wrote down what he said. I liked it so much, I wrote it down. Children who know more about their family history are better able to navigate their lives. That's me. I only knew my grandfather as Big Daddy. Yes, I'm from the South. I called him Big Daddy. I didn't know anything about him as a businessman. He sold the business when I was a child. So when I bought his company and started to revive it, I did something I had never done before, which is understand my family history. And I spent my evenings, especially that first year after I bought the company, reading his story and learning what he did to build the company. And it turned out that his story and his lessons, that was my MBA. I don't have a business background, but I learned how to revive his brand, how to make a comeback by reading his story. And I love this too. Understanding that there are ebbs and flows help us manage transitions. And that's from Bruce's talk. So I'm going to tell you 3 stories from my grandfather that helped me figure out how to bring back his brand. So this is story number 1. And it goes back to when he had just started really to build the brand. And he had a handful of stores. And at that point, he was on the Dixie Highway that went through Georgia. He was on the Jefferson Highway, Route 66, the Lincoln Highway. And then something horrible happened that threatened to bankrupt him. And for many of us, this was a great advancement in society. And it's interesting to me, I think so often progress isn't always progress when you really think about it. And so that's what happened to him. The interstate highway system came along. And actually, a lot of us were impacted, not just the businesses, but we know how it divided communities, especially communities along racial barriers, and destroyed many communities. So my grandfather had all of his stores on these roads across America that were not the interstate. So when the interstate started to come along, this is what taking a road trip looked like. So much fun. You could pull over and you could have coffee at a little diner that was shaped like a giant coffee pot. You could sleep in a wigwam. You know, roadside Americana was at its peak. And if you took a road trip, you would go right through downtown Savannah. You wouldn't take the interstate. There was no interstate. So you could really experience the community firsthand. And all these businesses along there thrived and prospered. And then the interstate came along and it looked like this. How blah, right? But this is something I really took away from Bruce's speech, is he said, don't look at these transitions as miserable phases. They are essential. They are essential times when you learn how to reinvent yourself. And that's what my grandfather did, because instead of running from the interstate like so many businesses did, and they said, by God, we're going to stay on Route 66 or wherever they were, most of them failed. My grandfather decided to not only accept change, he embraced it. And this is something I found in his papers. It was, by the way, next to the trademark, the one thing of value I got. I had 6 cases of his archives when I bought his company that no one had looked at in 50 years. So I discovered just this treasure trove of images, which you're seeing today. So I found this postcard in his papers, and I love it. It says, traveling on beautiful Interstate 80. I have been on Interstate 80. I have also been, no disrespect, I know it's right near here, I've been on I-95 and I-20 and I-10. I've been on every major interstate because I am a roadie by birth. It is in my genes. I'm going to be honest, they are not beautiful. The interstate is not beautiful. But that's what my grandfather did. He took this really hard, agonizing time that threatened to bankrupt him, and he not only embraced it, he said, this is beautiful, this is my moment. And so he not only moved his stores to the interstate, he suddenly came up with this great design. Before that, he had stores sort of all over the architectural map. He came up with this consistent blue roof design and the zigzag carport. It's like mid-century modern fun. And the logo, and he got a partnership with Texaco where he was the exclusive provider for Texaco on the interstate. He got a percentage of every gallon sold, made him a millionaire. Not a bad move for a college dropout. So he used this as an opportunity, right? And he also made those stores special. He knew that the interstate looked like this. It was boring, it was monotonous, it was miles and miles and miles of asphalt. I read this book once about taking a road trip through Iowa during that era when the interstate was first built, and they said it was like corn, Stuckeys, right? He realized he could break that monotony of a road trip with his stores. And he had lost that sense of community you got when you drove through Main Street America, but he got it back with his stores because every store was uniquely curated to reflect a sense of place. So if you pulled over at the Stuckeys and the Gulf Shores of Florida, you would get fishing bait and a license. If you pulled over in Texas, you would get all sorts of Native American souvenirs and stuff that reflected the state. So wherever you went, you still had a sense of community and place and belonging. So that was the first lesson I learned from him is when you have hard times, you embrace it and you pivot. And so I applied that to my own life. This is what I did when I bought his company. I initially thought, you know what, I'm gonna save all of these stores. I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna somehow figure out the financing. I hadn't quite thought through that. But I was like, I'm gonna somehow come up with tens of millions of dollars and compete with Buc-ee's. So I go on a road trip to tour my pecan log roll empire, and most of the stores look like this, which aren't so great. But I was having a good time, and I saw the world's largest chair, and yes, I did sleep in a wigwam. There's one still left. And I was having a good time until I got to a Stuckey store. It's one of the few still standing, and it looked like this. And it has a hole in the roof. And I remember sitting in that parking lot, and that was really, really my lowest moment. I was 53 years old. I had just gotten a divorce. I had sunk my entire life savings in a failing business. I'm sitting in that parking lot, and my son had gone on the road trip with me, and I started crying. And he said, "Mom, is this what you did with my inheritance?" Oh. It was such a low moment. But those low moments are when you figure things out, right? When you hit rock bottom, you find your foundation. And I call this my come to Jesus moment because I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, all right, so how do I get out of this? All right, I got to do something for social media. I got to do a post. So I was trying to figure out how on earth do I make this store look good on Instagram. So here's what I posted. Very proud of this. I have a little Jesus co-pilot dashboard savior figurine in my car. So I said, look at the Jesus, do not look at this store, please. But the cool thing is, it actually turned out to be my come to Jesus moment because I'd come all this way. I'd actually driven 2 days to Marion, Arkansas to be at this store. And I was gonna go inside. And I walked inside the store, and you know what I saw? It was filled with people. And they were in line buying stuff. So I get in the line, and I remember I bought this hillbilly mug, very tacky and inappropriate. So I'm buying this mug, and the man standing next to me, I ask him, why are you here? This store looks like crap. And what he said really turned things around for me, and I took a photo with him. I'm paraphrasing, but this is what he said. Maybe Stuckey's has seen better days, and maybe it's a fixer-upper. He also said, but so am I. I love that. Maybe Stuckey's is a fixer-upper, but so am I. And I remember what a special place it was as a kid. And that moment taught me two things. One, how you make people feel is the most important currency that any of us have. My grandfather made people feel so special that even a crappy-looking store with a hole in the roof, they still had that feeling. The other thing, much, much, much more practical, was people were buying our pecan log rolls, and they were buying our pralines, and they were buying our snacks and candies. So, but they weren't ours. We weren't making them anymore, and we didn't have good margins. I'm not going to get all into the business, but let's just say the numbers did not work. So that was my aha moment when I realized the brand still has sticking value if a store like this still inspires people to spend, and two, the product is what's making money. So that's how we can turn things around. So I embraced change like my grandfather. When you have hard times, you have to not only accept it, you have to go all in. And I realized what we were doing wasn't working. I'd spent a year trying to figure out how to bring this company back, and my aha moment was, we can bring this company back by making pecan snacks and candies. So that's what we did. You cannot do this stuff alone. It is really, really hard. So I think my superpower for navigating change is you build a team. And I got business partners, and we bought a pecan snack and candy plant. It's in Rennes, Georgia. Shameless plug. Please come visit us. You can tour the candy plant. There's a retail store. So that was really our turning point that made us realize we could bring this company back. And here's the other part, is you cannot do this alone. Like Bruce Feiler said, it's very isolating sometimes when you're trying to navigate these tough transitions in your life. Don't try to do it alone. And my grandfather didn't build a company alone. I wasn't going to rebuild it alone. And it's not just building an internal team with your employees and consultants and people you build around you. It's your community. So everyone here in Savannah, Chatham County, you're building community as well as building your businesses. And that's what we're doing at Stuckey's. And I have to say, I love this photo. Love my grandfather, but look at his leadership team. Looks a little different today, right? And that's what our community looks like as we build this company back. So that's comeback lesson 2. Build a team. You are not alone. I read somewhere the entrepreneurial journey is about being alone together. And I love that because it can be very lonely, but you're not alone. And so getting through these hard times, and we're right at the 5-year mark, so I'm ready to be done with my transition period. But I'm getting through it thanks to this team. So I've got one more lesson for you, and if you only remember one thing I say today, this is it. It's the most important. And that is, throughout my grandfather's papers, I kept seeing the same thing over and over, and it was just saying, every traveler is a friend. And I asked my dad about it, and he said, well, he had that written everywhere. It was even on his desk. And it meant that anyone who came in contact with Stuckey's, if it was an employee, a customer, a vendor, everyone was treated like they belonged. They were treated with respect. They were a friend. And nowhere was that more evident than in the fact that during the period of racial segregation, the Jim Crow era, when many establishments, especially on the highways and the interstates, were segregated, Stuckey's never was. We were never whites only. Yes, applaud that. And I was not able to find a lot of photos, frankly, of that period, but I did find that one. And then if you've seen the movie The Green Book, we are in the movie The Green Book. I'm a little biased. I think it's the best scene in the movie. It's a letter writing scene. But we're in the movie The Green Book for that reason. Because those of you not familiar with The Green Book, it was a traveler's guide for African Americans that could tell them where they could safely pull over and knew that they would not be harmed or threatened. And Stuckey's was one of those safe oases on the side of the road. And I'm going to tell you a fast-forward postscript to this part of my grandfather's story that really gives it meaning. So fast forward 30 years, me, his granddaughter, I am running for re-election to the Georgia General Assembly. I'd been in for 3 terms at that point, and I got redistricted. And my district had changed from being 97% white very liberal, I represented the Emory University area, to overnight it was over 70% African American, and only 2 of my 14 precincts had I represented before, and my declared opponent was the president of the NAACP. So I'm a little stubborn, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna put myself up for re-election, even if this doesn't look good for me. And what I did was I went to meet with the most influential African-American pastor in that community to seek his blessing and, of course, his endorsement. And he invited me to worship with him. And I remember I sat in the front row of the pew, and we're about halfway through the service, so we're about 2 hours in. I thought some of you might get that. And he looks down at me in the front pew, and he said, Sister Stuckey has agreed to bring us some words of inspiration. I had not agreed to give words of inspiration. And even though I had been a politician and a trial lawyer, and I was not unfamiliar to speaking in front of a lot of people, I was not used to talking about my faith in public. I am a person of faith. And I was the only white person in about a room of 400, 500 people. And I was so nervous, I looked at the woman next to me and I said, what do I do? And she put her hand on my knee and she said, honey, you just get up there and say, praise Jesus. A lot. So I get up there and I'm like, praise Jesus. And then they all say, praise Jesus back. So it was this nice little sing-song chorus, and I got through it. I thought I did okay. And afterwards, I go meet with Reverend Rucker in the pastor's study, and I have my game face on. I know he is going to endorse my opponent, the president of the NAACP. And I sit down, and he said, I'm going to endorse you. Whew, I must have done a really good job in the pulpit. He said, oh, honey, no, that was not it. He said, I am endorsing you because of your grandfather. I am endorsing you, yes. He said, I am endorsing you because people who look like me, people who look like my congregation, people in my family, we were always welcome at Stuckey stores. We always felt like we belonged. That's why I'm endorsing you. And that is purpose, right? Purpose will live on 30 years after you're gone, and you will never live to see it. But if you do purpose right, it is not just about your internal purpose or your company's purpose. It's about how you impact the entire community. And unless you are running your business or your life or your organization in a way that has purpose and meaning and impact, why are you doing it? So that story, more than anything, gave me the inspiration, the passion, the hope to know I can bring this brand back because I share that purpose, right? By the way, I won that election with over 70% of the vote. Yes. Thank you, Big Daddy. So, I'm sorry, I had to convert this to widescreen, so there's a few glitches on the slide deck. But this is my last slide, and I just want to sum it all up by saying, thanks to my grandfather, thanks to the lessons he taught me about embracing change, about building community, but most importantly, about creating a sense of belonging and making everyone feel special, and knowing that the way you make people feel is the most important commodity any of us have. That's why Stuckey's is making a comeback, right? We are not just selling pecan log rolls and pecan snacks. We are selling that we are making people feel like they belong, and that we stand for something that is so much more than just making money. Although I will say I'm very grateful to my grandfather for showing me the way to bring his brand back, because we have grown $10 million in sales in the past couple of years. Yes. So it just shows that if you have the right mindset, if you truly believe that what you are doing is so much bigger than rubber alligators and ashtrays shaped like toilets and pecan log rolls, there's a real purpose there. That is what gives us all meaning. And that's how we get through the hard times and make a comeback. We have time.
So we
right?
have a couple of minutes
time.
for questions.
I have 10 minutes.
Yes,
Woo.
you got about 10 minutes.
Yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Anybody, any questions for Stephanie?
Or comments. Sometimes I think comments are better. Yes, ma'am.
So I know you said you were an environmentalist.
Yes.
So how do you deal with your environmental self?
Yeah.
And also sell plastic gators
Yes, right?
and gas.
Yeah, so we do not sell gas. I don't want to get too complicated, but when I bought the company, if there's any lawyers in the room, you'll appreciate this. We have been out of compliance with federal franchise laws for over a decade in 20 states. We were facing a huge mess if I would try to move forward with franchising, so I ended up debranding almost all the stores. Most of them look like crap anyway, weren't making money. The original 12 stores that are still standing, we still have a license agreement for all of those. So we had to pivot our business model to focus on selling pecan snacks and candies. And that is 90% of our growth, not the licensing agreement. So we're making our money by the product that we make, which is very sustainable, because one of the biggest carbon footprints that any business can have is shipping. We do very little shipping. We purchase all of our pecans in-state. They're fresh crop pecans, all grown from Georgia farmers. So that's the big crux of our business, is we are a pecan snack and candy brand now. Now we're also working on other things, and some of the licensed stores, quite a few of them, I have used my environmental connections, and they now have EV charging. Quite a few of them have EV charging. And we're also looking at reducing some of our supply chain. We purchase all of our ingredients domestically. We purchase our packaging domestically, even if it costs a little bit more. And I'm not anti-global trade or anything, but I am very pro-American. And I'm very pro making stuff here. And so that's a big part of what we're trying to do, is build community by bringing jobs, bringing manufacturing jobs back to this country and making them good paying, treat our people right. We did 3 rounds of pay raises. So I'm a big believer. Environment is not just air, water, land. It is equity. It is how you treat your people. It's how you source your product. Are people paid well? Are they treated well? Is there a good culture? So we're doing all of that in Little Wrens, Georgia, population 2,700, which I love. Yeah. Yes?
So I know you discussed your lowest moment. What was your highest moment that really made you feel like you made it, that really brought it back?
You know what's interesting is comebacks do not happen overnight, and I love what Bruce Feiler said about the transitions taking 5 years. For me, there's not any one like, woohoo, this is such a high five, and I think that's an important thing in business and in life, is to celebrate those small wins. It's about the daily, day in, day out, we are slogging away. Now, we do take moments to high five and celebrate. I think closing on the candy plant was a huge deal. Like getting into manufacturing was a game changer for us. But I remember the day after we closed on the candy plant, it was like, okay, now what? You know? Has anyone seen the Robert Redford movie, The Candidate? I'm totally dating myself, but I love that movie. It's a great movie. So you should see it. I don't even know if you can rent it anymore. It's so old. But Robert Redford plays this very naive and ambitious, idealistic politician, and he runs for, I think it's governor, but he runs for this high office. And I'm giving it away, so sorry. He wins at the end. And there's, you know, this big climactic moment, right? And you think, woohoo, the movie's going to be over. It doesn't end there. It's the best ending. He goes into this back room with his advisors, and he's like, now what? Right? That's the way I felt that day. It was like, oh my gosh, we bought this candy plant. Well, now what? So often those high fives are followed by, all right, let's get to work. Let's get to work. Yeah, also we were in the New York Times front page Sunday business section. So that was my little moment with my dad. I sent that to him, and I said, not bad for someone who's never run a lemonade stand, Dad. So maybe that was my high moment, saying, Dad.
We have time for one more. Anybody else with a question?
I thought I saw someone way back.
Is there
but
someone
maybe
way back? If you...
The way back.
Oh, there we go. Oh.
You're going to get your steps in today. And I'll stick around for the lunch if folks want to chat.
Why don't we have a little fun here? Tell me your take on the pronunciation of your major product.
Right?
I've been all around the United States, and they pronounce it differently.
Yeah.
Different places.
Dang, I thought I was going to get off easy without it's just a really hard question. So it's interesting. I have written a book about my grandfather's story and my story. It's called Unstuck. It comes out April 1st, not an April Fool's Day joke, I promise. But I say all that because I have an Audible book coming out with it, and the narrator reached out to me and she said, I just have one question. How do you pronounce P-E-C-A-N? And this is my usual response. Well, how do you pronounce it? I will usually say whatever the person I'm talking to says. So, how many of y'all say pecan? Raise your hand. All right? We're in the South, so how many say pecan? Yes! Okay. It's usually reversed, just to be fully transparent. There was a study done by the National PECAN Shellers Association of America. 70% of Americans say pecan, but those of us who say pecan, which is what I say, that is a Southern thing. Here's what my grandfather said, so I will let him from the grave settle the debate. They're pecans when you pick, pecans when you pick them, pecans when you sell them. So, thank you.